Okay, today I'm getting ready to do the front brakes and rotors on my wife's 2008 Honda CRV. What I like to do is I keep a couple of bricks around and I chalk up the wheels. I do one on the front and then I do one on the back, and plus I use jack stands to hold it up. First thing you need to do is break the nuts and bolts, the nuts while they're on the ground, and then once you got it in the air, you don't have the wheel rotating on you to take them off. I recommend that you put the jack stands in the location that's made for jacking the car. So you'll see there's a little metal frame here, and that's the recommended place for jacking up the car here. Although to actually jack it up, I used a frame piece where the rail, the step rail is connected. But to put my jack stands, I'm going to put them in the normal jack location. Also, I recommend you using the wide base jacks like this, not the little small hydraulic jacks. Those small hydraulic jacks are nice because they can lift the weight and they can get your car off the ground, but their base is so small that it's easy for those to tip over and allow the car to fall on you or fall on its rotor or A-arm and all of that. So get you some wide base jack stands. You only need to get the tire just enough off the ground so you can do the brakes and rotors. All you need to do is remove the tire itself. These days you're going to need metric sockets. This is a nice little socket set. Actually came from my little neighbor, 97-year-old World War II vet. Passed a couple years ago, and his daughters let me have this tool set. I used to borrow it from him a lot because most of my tools were SAE instead of metric, and he would let me borrow this set, so I'm really honored to possess this. He was my neighbor, him and Miss Grace, for say 17 years, and used to tell me all kinds of World War II stories. So it's an honor for me to keep using his tools. Passed 2 years ago, and probably the best neighbor I've ever had. So I bought the AC Delco rotors. They're supposed to be OEM replacements. They're not too expensive. I'll give you a shot of the part number, and I'll take a picture of it. Plus I'll put a link in the bio. Also, when you're doing your brakes, your calipers, when you take them off, they're gonna be squeezed in just due to the hydraulic pressure. So you're gonna have to press those back into place when you go to put them back on. So you want to go ahead and take this cap off of your brake so you won't have that extra pressure when pushing back your calipers to get it back over the rotor. Okay, first thing to do is to remove the caliper from the rotor. Like I said, I'll change the brakes if I need to. If not, I'm just going to change the rotor and then have the old rotors turned and keep them as backup, and then I'll just have to rotate through them instead of buying new ones. So here you want this bolt here to come off, take the rotor loose, and this bolt down here to come off, and then you can take these rotors and move them out of the way. But I recommend you just taking this loose. This here bolt just holds this hose. You want to give yourself some flexibility on the hose because you're going to have to support this so you don't damage this hose. So this will allow you to take these calipers off, and I'll set them back here so they'll have some support. Here, to take the bolt loose on the brake line, you have the 12 millimeter socket down here to take the caliper loose. You have a 19 millimeter socket, so you're going to need a 12 millimeter and a 19 millimeter. So when you take this bolt loose, you want to make sure you support the caliper so it doesn't drop. Hold it from below. I took the bottom one off first so I could be at an angle where I could support it, because these bolts are very tight. I had to get underneath to break them. I couldn't break them from above. So do the bottom first and the top last, and then, as I said, I'll move it over here to the A arm to give it some support. As we can see on here, both of the pads seem to have a lot of pad left, so looks like I may be lucky and I just have to take the rotors off and replace them and just put everything back in. But as you see, I said you're going to have to probably have to press those rotors back in. It doesn't look like they're pushing out much right now. I don't know, maybe if I hurry I could get them back on, but if I need to, I'll have to take them and squeeze them back in. Some people use C-clamps. I've used large channel locks before to push them back in. Just make sure you don't damage the brake pad or the caliper backing itself. Okay, here's what the new rotor looks like. They have like a little coating on them sometimes. I think I bought these non-coated, so just put this on, put the caliper back in place, and then go seat the brakes so they'll fit with the wear on the rotor itself. Going to look for the procedure for you, and I'll try to put the link in the description. Okay, today I'm going to change the rotors. My rotors have been vibrating, plus I'm going to change the brake pads, although they don't really look like they are that bad off, but the rotors have been vibrating. If I don't need to change the brake pads, I'm just going to change the rotors. But what I will do is, I bought new rotors. I'm just going to put the new rotors on, and there's still a few places that rotate rotors, and I'm going to take these down and see if they're still in spec to be rotated. I'll have them rotated, and I'll just keep them, so the next time I'll have a pair to just pop on and off and go get the other ones rotated. So my brake pads may not need changing, but if they do, I'm going to change them. If they don't, I'll just be doing the rotors. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a nut and bolt dropper. Every time I do something, I drop nuts and I drop bolts. Usually they end up in the engine compartment somewhere. I can't find them, so I saw somebody using this little tray here, so I bought me one. It saved me some time of dropping bolts and nuts, because I take them off, I put them right in the tray, and then hopefully I won't drop them once I try to put them back on. But that's a problem that this little tray can't solve. But it saves me in the beginning, but it may not save me in the end, but I think it's worth the money. Here's the new rotors on. Gonna put the brake caliper back in place, and we're done on this side. I don't know if I need to make a video for the second side. It's pretty much the same. So these are both front rotors, so back brakes are good, so I'll just go with this one probably instead of showing two. It'll just make the video longer. I'm going to give the tip that I got from an old engineer when I was doing engineering. I do IT work now, but that engineer told me, don't ever tighten your bolts until you get all of them started. It's a good rule to live by, because you'll end up doing the work double, because you need to get everything threaded, or the thread started, before you tighten down. It'll save you a lot of time and a lot of wasted energy. Many may know that, but for those who don't, just as your warning. It wasn't a problem. The calipers didn't push themselves out, so it's easy to slide those back on. I'm going to give you another tip that I saw on someone else's video, which I can't remember who that was now, but if I could remember, I'd give them the credit. But if you're just changing your brake pads, you don't have to take the entire caliper assembly off. And what that person showed was you can disconnect the part that has the calipers in it only by taking this bolt off right here, and the same one on the bottom, which is, well, you just loosen this one, you take this one off, and when you do that, you can just take this part here and rock it back, pull the calipers off, I mean the brake pads off, put the new ones on, and then you just make sure you push the calipers in if they need to be pushed in, and then you just rock it forward, tighten up those two bolts, and you're done without taking this whole entire assembly off. And that way you don't have to support the brake line. It'll make your job a little easier. It's a trick that I saw on someone's video before I started doing my own work, and it's a good tip. It makes it a lot quicker and easier. It saves you some time and headache. I also talked about getting the nuts and bolts started before you tighten everything up. One thing you want to do is when you start, especially if you use an impact wrench or something along that line, you want to start your nuts and bolts on the threads to make sure you got them in there good so they're not cross-threaded, because the impact wrench, if you're using it, it's not going to be able to tell, and the next time you try to take it off, it's going to be a big problem for you. You're going to get it cross-threaded. It's going to take a lot of strength just to get it off, and so make sure you start your nuts and bolts by finger. That way if you're using an impact, you'll feel if it's cross-threaded or not, and it'll save you replacing a thread or trying to drill a bolt out or something like that. It could be a real problem if you get them cross-threaded. In here, I'm going to give you guys a little hint. Before I started making the YouTube videos of car maintenance, a while back I decided I was going to change my struts because they were bad, and also change my hub bearing because they were making a noise. I think Honda may have had a recall on them a while back, but I had already done mine because at the time they didn't have a recall. If you're going to do that, the hub bearings, you need to make sure you have something with a lot of power to get this nut off here. I literally spent 6 hours trying to get just one of these nuts off. You have to make sure you have to get this indentation here all the way out so you can rotate that nut without it locking in place. You're going to need a big screwdriver, a big pry to pry this out enough to allow that nut to move freely. And you're going to have a huge breaker bar, like a 1/2-inch drive minimum, with some length, and you may need some pipe to get more torque on it. But this here nut, I didn't have that when I started. I broke 2 small breaker bars on it, and like I said, I spent 6 hours just trying to get one nut loose. I finally broke it, and then having the big breaker bar allowed me to get the other one off easier, but it's still a struggle. If you do have a impact wrench, definitely use it. It comes down to having the right tools. I didn't always do my own maintenance, but my daughter's in college and she's going pre-med, so all the money I can save is the best thing I could possibly do. So having the right tools and doing work yourself, you definitely need the right tools. But that day I changed out the hub bearings because they were making a grinding noise. The rear ones are easy. They're just four small nuts to take off, or 4 small bolts to take off, and they just pop right out and pop right back in. These here, you got to break this bearing, this nut that holds that bearing in place, and it's crazy tight. So just an FYI, right tools do the job, and your job will be a lot easier. It shouldn't take you 6 hours to get one nut broken loose.